Hi, where are you from?
New York. We're in Penfield, outside of Rochester.
Oh, great. We're in Haverford, Pennsylvania,
Oh, okay. That's the eastern part of Pennsylvania, I think.
right outside Philadelphia. Yeah,
Yeah,
about half
yeah.
an hour from Philadelphia.
I grew up in southwest Pennsylvania, about 40 miles southeast of Pittsburgh, up in the mountains.
Oh, yeah, beautiful place.
Yeah, it is.
Good, good. I'm trying to, see how we can see. If I sit here, it's sort of dark, but that's okay. I need a light here. Oh, you know what? I can put on this one over here. I'm not gonna move the light. Huh? What? You can't. Yeah. I want to be able to say hi to the folks. Excuse me. Oh, that's better. We see you. We pull you over a little bit. Yeah, we can see you. Well, it was very dark back there. You can turn it off if you don't want it on. I think this. Okay, I'll turn it off. There we go. It's dark in the back. Now, you know what happens? It shines really bright right in between us. And it's like this spotlight. So all you see, that's why I moved it.
Table there or something like that, or put it on, or move that out. Move that out. Put it on. See if I can dump these everywhere. I don't know if sitting's gonna work out real well anyway.
So have you been to the vineyard? You did.
Sorry, did you ask something?
I just wondered if you'd been to the vineyard.
Oh, yes.
Yes, a couple times, yes.
Oh, great.
And you?
It's so pretty up there. Yeah, it was an annual stop because we went to Chautauqua
Oh, nice.
and family gathering there. And on the way back, we would go see Aunt Corinna, who lived to be mid-90s in Hammondsport.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
the Keach family had long ago had that was their property where the vineyard is.
Oh, no kidding. Wow.
And there's is it the Keach Barn? F? Yeah, it says Keach Barn on it, and that's Keach
Oh,
Place or Keach Place. Anyway, so we've got, my husband has roots up there, and it's been, you know, a lot of history of the earlier days of the land. And so, and very fond of the area. It's so beautiful.
it is. Yeah. Interesting.
And you're not far away.
No, it's an hour-ish.
Mhm.
Yeah, about an hour, maybe hour 15 to get there.
Yeah.
You mentioned Haverford. I spent the summer of 1975 in Marcus Hook.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. It's not a garden spot, but it's I was doing an internship with Sun Oil Company. So I was getting ready for cross country in the fall, so I would run north from there and up past Swarthmore and out to the west a little bit and do a loop back down to Marcus Hook. It was about a 10-mile loop or so. So it was, yeah, kind of familiar with the area.
Good. Let's see if I can get.
You open any other wines?
You don't open the wines, right?
I thought I said you do 30 minutes before.
No, that's if you have unaerated wines, you open them up. But if you have, these have been aerated.
The little bottles are ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah, just in pouring the little bottles out from the main supply, they aerated them for us. So we're good to go.
Well, we could put this here, aim it at the couch, and then we could each have an end table.
Okay.
Wanted to sit.
You have to, oh, just move that and not be
Yeah.
James.
I'll be above it.
I'll be behind the frame.
Still trying to figure out where to sit.
Yeah, I've been moving lights around trying to.
Yep. Well, we want it where the bar is, makes sense for the glasses, but there's not a lot of standing or sitting room there, so we're adjusting here. Oh, Seamus, you are in it. Hi.
I think I'm gonna say-
Shot.
Yeah.
On TV. Look at you.
Can't drag these chairs.
Yeah, we don't need the chair. We do this. I see you. Can we see you? Yeah. we can see you. We've got a tiny screen. No, we just. It's too late to change all the technology. But
You got that cable, you can just plug it in.
Oh, somebody else is joining.
But it doesn't have a camera,
That's right.
and it's not a, yeah, it's a link, it's a Zoom link. I don't think that,
You can, any screen that you can transport to that.
well, it's hanging right there. You want me to go plug it in and start moving? Huh? Here's the flashlight. Just you're gonna have to turn on the TV and get back on the TV.
Got the speed review change, so first time,
Okay.
like to see everyone
So whoever's talking is what?
highlighted. It's
The
like,
TV's off.
I imagine now we'll be reading it.
Check.
There's a USB, there's a HDMI.
That's, I'm trying to get it plugged in, but I can't reach it. I'm gonna have to figure out. There. Oh, technology.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
We're working on getting this over to the monitor so we can see everybody on a bigger screen. There's always the TV. And it needs to get on there. Plug it in number 3.
Alice? Hi. Wanna bring you over? You Come over here. Wanna come here?
We're seeing fewer than 10,000 cases a day.
What?
What I didn't want.
Maybe I talked to you.
What's the DVD player? 5 TV. No, it's on 79. Turn it off. Blu-ray. That's it. Ah, there you go. Okay. Good. You are all now on the big screen. Now, can they hear? Can they hear? Um, uh, view, gallery view. Open it up. We'll go to that. Okay. I guess the volume using that one. It's not the,
Maybe it's-
um, it's not on mute. But I think it's gonna come through the speaker on the Zoom. Let's see. Can somebody say hi so we can be sure we hear you?
Hi.
Hello?
Good. Yay, we can.
We're inventing a connection to, right, you feed from the laptop into the TV. But we got video, but we don't have audio.
We do have audio. Now, because a lot of people said hi and we heard them.
Yeah.
So I think we're okay.
I think we have a lot of people still on mute until it really
Yeah,
gets started.
right. And we will all go on mute, I guess.
I figured you guys probably didn't want to hear my heavy breathing, so.
So we have outside Rochester up in the upper left corner. And we're Haverford, Pennsylvania, just outside Philadelphia.
I'm from Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh,
You have your speakers plugged in.
And we're from Willow Grove, Pennsylvania.
Oh, you're not far at all.
Nope.
Great. I'm turning them off. Yep.
Yeah, we've leaped the technology hurdle.
Woo.
We need chair.
Swivel chair.
You don't screen an office.
Don't worry
Yeah,
about
big
it.
screen.
Yeah, in the living room. Oh, oh. Oh, I found batteries on the glass. I think so. Do you all have Riesling glasses?
using this.
What? Just right. It's so regular wine.
We have lots of shapes and sizes.
I'm guessing it's not critical to the taste.
I don't think so. Well, and we have good glasses and we have just regular glasses. He's using good glasses and I don't dare because I know I'll break one. So I'm like, it doesn't change the taste. I'll use a cheap glass and it'll taste just fine.
But mine holds more.
Yeah, you've got two. These are more like, this is sort of like a sherry glass kind of thing, but it's got the more rounded bottom, but it's little. So I'm for the wine, regular wine glass. So there's not a huge amount of wine.
You know what we're doing?
You all toured a number of the wineries around the Finger Lakes.
What?
Did you just, how did you find Hugo Lake?
We don't live far from there, so we do lots of excursions to the Finger Lakes every year. You stumbled on this one day?
Yeah, Neil and I, my buddy, my wine drinking buddy from California comes just about every year missed last year, of course, but, and so we go around and try out new places. And I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, we stumbled into Cuca Lake Vineyard, and he joined up and I joined up, so.
You tell him we were doing
Yeah.
this tonight? You want to?
But he's working.
He's done a marvelous job with that winery.
Like 10 years?
I think he's been at, the first time we saw him, we were I have a date on a picture, it was, 05. When it's 08.
So maybe 15 years
Yeah.
then?
Oh, they just probably don't know the technology.
Sure, probably.
Where'd that lamp come from?
My office.
Your stash.
You didn't want it here.
That's it.
So I took it in there. It's nice having it up. I like having a lamp up above. And then so, but I'm still in dark.
Jim's gone to see if he's gonna call the winery. See if
Oh, good.
anyone answers.
I'm glad we're not all alone.
Well, we can unscrew them in a minute and and get started.
Give our opinion. Definitely.
That's kind of, not exactly perfect.
No, well, we're just figuring out
Yeah.
how to get this set up so it works well seeing people on the big screen. I think, but the lighting, we gotta work on the lighting here.
Are you casting to your television?
Yes, yeah, just first time. So we're figuring out lighting and
Yeah, my son's not here to help me cast, so we're just we're just on the laptop.
Well, so many of these Zoom meetings, that you got a cast of dozens sometimes. So it's
I can hear Jim. Someone answered.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, I'll let her know. Okay, thanks. See you soon.
Well, I could hear them. They said it's 7 p.m.
no, we got 6:30 was
What did we?
Yeah.
Maybe they told us that just in case we were all fashionably late.
Yeah, I'm telling them, and they all agree that they're 6:30.
Well, that's what I read, but that's right. We'll just wait.
I think I got the man itself.
Yeah, I'm not gonna log off and wait and log back on, so.
Continue to work on the lighting.
There were several people
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
You gonna jump on?
No, 7 o'clock. You didn't seem too concerned.
All right.
Okay, fine.
We would have eaten dinner. Is it an hour?
I don't know.
We weren't sure. It's still not great.
Yeah, I just messengered them on Facebook and they said, yeah, we'll be joining you all at 7.
Okay.
Okay, I guess this is the cocktail hour beforehand.
Well, must be the 6:30 was the time you were supposed to take it out of the refrigerator.
6 o'clock.
I don't- It'll be fine.
Oh, yeah, maybe that is.
Hello,
what it is.
everybody.
Hi.
Hi. So the tasting is going to begin at 7 p.m. I'm not really sure why it was able to get into sooner, but we will be joining you all officially at 7.
Okay, sounds
We'll
good.
just hang
Just sit tight and we'll be there at 7.
out. Okay.
All right. See y'all soon.
Other names. People like vineyard. Oh, they're getting some stuff up.
Start my show.
She's working on it.
Right.
I guess it wouldn't be good to start with a different wine, right? Just have a little glass of wine before. Probably not.
Something at first.
Would it ruin your taste buds for? Probably wouldn't be good. You want to go into it fresh and with no preconceived wine
What time is it now?
in your brain. It's
6:30.
6:46. So oh, I know why, because the camera's over there. I see Melvin Goldman. Do I see you? I think I see you.
You're gonna get a very small image.
Yeah.
A laptop screen, and then you've got the distance.
Mhm.
This
Well, one of the options was, because we've got that little table, I thought I could put the laptop on that.
Mhm.
But earlier I was thinking of doing that, and I just thought, I've got to unplug all the speakers, and I have to make it permanently move over there.
Yeah.
It really works better right there. So,
it's a lot of
Yeah, plugging in.
replugging.
right. Right. So, I'll mute us.
All right, guys, we're gonna get started in just a minute here, but I just wanted to introduce myself and the other folks at Cuckoo Lake Vineyards. My name is Katie. We've got Ben, our winemaker here, and of course, Mel, the owner and proprietor, who I'm sure you all are familiar with in some regard. The way we're gonna do this is we're gonna kind of walk through an overview of the vineyards that we have here on site, the breakdowns of the different vintages themselves, and we're going to give space for any comments on what you're tasting and smelling, any questions you might have. If you have questions during the discussion itself, feel free to type them up in the chat and we will answer them as time allows. But we're definitely going to give you guys, a moment to openly say what you're tasting and smelling for each of the wines. So in just a minute here, it's not quite 7 p.m., but it will be soon and we'll get started. And
Hi, Katie.
Hi, Ash. Yeah, it's fun to see some familiar faces and a whole lot of new ones.
Mhm.
Mel, unmute yourself if you want to talk.
I just wanted to say happy birthday to Ev, belated happy birthday before we start.
I think we've got just about everybody here. It is 7 p.m. and we are recording this. So if anybody wants to go back and rewatch this tasting or share it with somebody else afterwards, especially now that you've got your bottles and you'll be experts on these 3 vintages, we're going to send out this video afterwards, a link to download it, so you'll be able to access it later. So I will pass the microphone over to Mel and Ben. Mel, you're still muted.
Thank you very much, Katie. It's wonderful to have Katie and Ben here, both of whom are creative and exciting. And I really am excited to be with so many of you, friends of the winery, people, most of whom I know or have met, and even to a relative, a sister. It's exciting too to be starting to be doing our first virtual tasting with Riesling, because Riesling is where we began, and Riesling is where we've earned our reputation, our international reputation, if I may say so. I'm sorry. And the Katie has done a wonderful job, and we'll be showing you briefly, as you can see, this vineyard right in front here. I believe that's our Evergreen Lake vineyard. That is, if I'm not mistaken, is one of the components in all three wines that you receive. Yes, it's in each of the wines that you have received. And we have vines. If you look at the other side of the lake, you can see that open area is, you see where the grapes are? Well, that's roughly where our vineyard on the other side of the lake is, and that's where our larger vineyard. We have about 30 acres there, whereas we only have about 6 or 7 on the west side of the lake. And we have the privilege, which is unusual in the Finger Lakes or in most places, to have vineyards on both sides of the lake. So we get the morning sun for the west side and the evening sun or the afternoon sun for the east side. One other, I just want to make 2 or 3 comments and then turn it over to Ben before we get to our wines. One of the interesting aspects of our doing the 3 Rieslings is we're doing 3 of our basic dry Rieslings, which are blends. Every year in the spring, although this year might be slightly different, we taste each lot individually. So we taste them blind and decide which ones we're going to bottle separately as a single vineyard. And then we have a whole bunch left, including parts of some others, of some of those that we bottle as a separate single vineyard, including the Evergreen Lake is a little bit bigger, so is the 20 Rows. So we usually use some of it as a part of a single vineyard, and some of it ends up being in a blend. But then we blind taste a bunch of blends that the winemaker, this year it will be Ben, whom you'll meet in a moment, and then we blind taste different blends of the dry Riesling and the semi-dry, and we decide which is the best, which we think is the best. So you're getting a combination of those dry Rieslings from 3 different years. One other note, I don't know if any of you have participated in our annual Riesling harvest, which is one Saturday every year, usually in October. Each of these wines has some juice from the pickings of the group of friends and friends of the winery and family that have picked the vines on that one Saturday. It's only one component. There are many. Let me now turn it over to our winemaker who joined us to finish up the 19s and then has been here through to make the 2020 vintage. His name is Ben Sherman. He came to us via a much less known area. I don't know if you've heard of it, Bordeaux, where he did his graduate training. And then he spent some time working for 2 different wineries, vineyards in Bordeaux before trying California, working at a very well-regarded winery in California, and then on the South Island of New Zealand before coming back to the best place around the Finger Lakes and to Keuka Lake Vineyards. And so we're happy to have Ben, and who will lead us in the tastings.
Excellent. Thank you, Mel, for the introduction. That was lovely. And welcome everyone to this tasting. And I don't know, probably all of you, maybe I've met a few in passing that were local, but I hope to see and meet you guys in person someday, very soon. So yeah, Mel, did we want to look at some of the single vineyard shots at all first before we hopped right into the 18? Or should we just go directly into tasting the 18?
Yeah, I think we could go into the 18, and if we want to discuss the single vineyard spots in the course, because in the 18, it's made up of vineyards from which we've made a bunch of single vineyards. The 18, in fact, is made up of of all of the vineyards on the west side of the lake. So if you look at it, Evergreen Lake is 41% of it. The percentages of the composition of the wine are right there, but it's made up of Ernesto Lucy, Goldman, Falling Man, and Evergreen Lake, and the group of pickers, the group of friends and family that picked the Riesling that year picked Ernesto Lucy and Goldman. This is one of 2 years, actually one of 3 years since 2008, where the Falling Man didn't make it into into a single vineyard status. But you can kind of tell that Falling Man is in here. Go ahead. Did you want to?
Yeah, sure. So this kind of being a vintage theme tasting, we're tasting, our dry Riesling bottling over 3 different years. We really wanted to kind of showcase the influence of the climate and the terroir and specific weather that we experience around Keuka Lake. And that can really kind of give you an idea of how variable and how dynamic, not only being a winemaker and a grape grower is, but just how unique this area is. And when we think about vintage variation, we think about the sun and how the sun influences the growing season, and particularly here, rain and humidity plays a very important role in regards to disease pressure. And I think that's one of the themes that we experienced in 2018 was there was an increased level of heat.
Should I add to what you're saying there, Ben?
Absolutely, yeah.
I was going to say that 18 was a very funny year because up until July, it looked like a beautiful year where we had sun and warmth, and it looked like it was going to be a warmer year than normal. And then all of a sudden, we started getting high humidity, particularly at night, and rain. And the rains just went on and on. And so it was a very difficult year, and we had a lot of, we'll be frank, bunch rot. And so harvest was the most difficult harvest we ever faced because, we do all of our harvests by hand. We had to harvest 3 times. We had to go through twice, once in advance, and then once the night before we were going to harvest to take off all the bad stuff so we could get good fruit for this. But it meant that we had a tiny crop, and what was left it wasn't the ripest crop, but it's very interesting as you will see. But that was what we faced in 2018. You don't want high humidity, and you don't want rains and lots of rain in the harvest season, and that's what happened that year. Cheers.
So how does that translate to the glass? Should we have a taste of the 18?
Yeah.
All right. So just a general kind of tasting regime that I go through when I taste the wine. I definitely always look at the wine first, and I note the color, and I look at the color can, particularly on a white wine, give me clues to its age. And then I give it a swirl, and I kind of examine the viscosity and see how the wine runs down the side of the glass. And that can be telling to the amount of alcohol in the wine or the amount of sugar. So the higher the viscosity on the wine, the higher of those elements can be found in that wine. And it being a year where we didn't reach the desired maturity level, the desired sugar level, we're going to see a lower bit of alcohol in these wines for 2018. And that's going to show in the viscosity, the total viscosity. And then I look at the aromatic component to the wine. So I'll smell the wine. And this wine for me is quite typical of Riesling. So you're going to have some of those petrol notes and a lot of citrus and green apple. So I get a lot of lime and lemon pith, a little bit of green apple. And those characteristics are typical of Riesling, but more typical in a year where the ripeness level is a little bit lower. So take a sip, take a taste. I always kind of like to aerate the wine in my mouth a bit. I like to see how long that flavor persists in my mouth and the feeling, the tactile feeling of the wine in my mouth. And it's definitely a little bit lighter than the wines that we'll taste down the road. But again, that's also due to that vintage variation, that particular season that we had. But really nice, bright citrus, lemon, and lime. Again, there's that green apple characteristic. And I think for the vintage that we had and the struggle that we had during this vintage, it turned out to be a very nice wine. Yeah.
Do you want to solicit comments from everybody else?
Anybody has any, notes that they're getting, any flavors, any comments, feel free to unmute yourself and jump on in and share it.
Any takers?
2018 was the first year that we were there. So it's a real pleasure to taste it now, knowing that we were part of that harvest that year.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
That's cheers to you, to the harvesters.
We immediately, pretty quickly tasted the apple, both of us. It's wonderful. And then you mentioned the citrus, and I go, oh yes, there it is.
Yeah, that green apple jumped out like right away for me. It was
Yeah, it's very interesting how the style of the wine is influenced not only by the winemaker and the things that we do in the cellar, but also very much, probably even more so, by the season and the growing season that we have, and the viticulturists and the people managing the vineyard and what they're doing in the vineyard has a crucial, very important role in the style of the resulting wine. Yeah.
The green apple that I'm tasting is almost like an apple that's not quite ripe yet. Like when you bite into a green apple and it's still a little hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was thinking, Kelly. Also, hi, Kelly.
Hi, Ashley. But yeah, it's not unpleasant. It's not something I was expecting. It's really interesting and it's good in this context.
Yeah. Not a flavor profile that I'm used to tasting in wines, but I usually am more of a red wine drinker, so I feel like it's not something that I usually pick up in those types of wines. So it's very interesting, but it is surprising in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Great.
How many people are on this?
Anyone else have any comments or questions about this wine? I can speak a little briefly about the style of the winemaking as well. Our perspective is we like to be as hands-off as we possibly can in the cellar. We have very little additions. Sometimes we use some settling enzymes just to help compress the juice. And we use just one strain of yeast in our cellar to ferment all of our Riesling specifically. But that's pretty much it. We use a little bit of sulfur at the end just to protect the wines from a microbiological standpoint. But aside from that, we don't do any other fining techniques. It's pretty much grapes to glass without any adulteration or manipulation of the juice. So these are pretty pure expressions of our terroir and of the vintage. As you can see, those flavors that you're getting and you're experiencing in the glass, those are they're going to be different from the ones we taste down the road. And that's because, you know, we allow the vintage and the terroir to show through in each of our bottlings, which is great that we do that.
For those of you that are vegans, you should be aware that this is a vegan-friendly wine. We don't use fining agents.
I'm curious, since you said this was the most difficult vintage in years, how were the last couple since then for you?
The last couple were, well, this, you know, ironically, 2020 was the most glorious vintage. I mean, one of the worst years, but the most glorious vintage that we will probably have had ever.
Something to celebrate, woo!
Yeah, I mean, something in 2020 to celebrate is right. It was easy. There was absolutely, because it was dry, but somehow it was dry in a way that provided enough moisture, enough rain, that the vines didn't suffer from drought stress. The work in the vineyard was very easy. We do, in relation to what Ben was saying, we're hands off in the winery, but we're hands on in the vineyard. We do everything by hand. We do lots and lots. We pull the leaves. We green harvest or cluster things. We prune by hand. We harvest totally. All of our harvest is by hand. And 19 was a very nice year too. I think I've said this before, and some people might disagree with me, but I believe that we're one of the rare beneficiaries of global warming. The Finger Lakes has benefited from longer ripening seasons. So the Riesling, the 18 Riesling is probably much more akin to a Riesling back 40, 50 years ago in the Finger Lakes, I'm guessing. Not necessarily the style, but the level of ripeness. 18 was that kind of year, but 19 and 20, 17 and 16, we'll be discussing 16 and 15 soon. So all the other years have been much, I mean, we've gotten much riper fruit and been generally warmer. Anybody else? I mean, I know that, please don't hesitate. There's nothing, just, you know, what you taste, even if you hear something, if you taste something different than anybody else has said, it's your taste buds that count. There's nothing wrong. So please feel free to comment.
Just a quick question. We've noticed before with the Evergreen Lek, there's a lot more minerality generally in that when it's a single vintage. And I kind of pick up a little bit of it, I think, from the heavy percentage here. Can you speak to what kind of sets the soil there apart from some of the other single vineyard sites?
That's very interesting because there was one fancy restaurant on the outskirts of New York City that was carrying our 2015 Evergreen Lek and 2015 Goldman. And they called up via our distributor and asked for some stones to tell them basically soil samples. They want a copy of they wanted a bunch of stones from each vineyard so that they could show their diners what the vineyards were like. What's so interesting about, by the way, does that individual have a driver's license yet? Can they? No, I'm just joking.
He does not, but he's got a very good fake ID, so no worries there.
Good to
know. What distinguished the Evergreen Lek with these large stones, slate, and it's just filled with them, and it doesn't have a lot of topsoil. I too agree. It tends to be quite minerally, as opposed to some of the other vineyards, much more so than Goldman. I mean, those two, the 15s, they're side by side, literally side by side, but the vineyards are so different. And that's what makes one of the other ones that, yeah, in this case, we have Ernesto Lucy and Goldman. You know, it's the blend is so interesting because you get Goldman tends to be a little bit fruitier, and Ernesto Lucy tends to be a little bit more minerally, and I would say more complex. And so blending the two makes it for a very nice wine. And then you have the other ones. Getting Falling Man was a gift to this wine. Right? That's my favorite vineyard. Anybody else?
Ev's got a question.
Please.
Hey, Mel.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was wondering when did this vineyard go in?
Oh, that's a good question, Ev. It was planted in 1999. The order, and that's one of the interesting things that we didn't go to the vineyards on the other side, but if you look at the vineyards here, Goldman was planted in 98, Evergreen in 99, Falling Man in 2001, and Ernesto Lucy in 2000, Ernesto in 2004, and Lucy in 2009. And then 20 Rows across the lake, if you and Upper East Side were both planted in 2004, although we had to do a number of replants there. And then the Lower East Side, which is not labeled, but if you look at the Leon Malo Feast, the Leon Malo Feast there, down, we have right above there is this, it's a trapezoidal parcel, small one, below where you were pointing, Katie, the trapezoidal parcel, right? Yeah, that's right. That one is the Lower East Side. And then that one was planted in 2005 and 2006, I believe. And then we planted all the way the terraces down below, which will be producing, we hope, a little bit this year, in the teens. I don't recall the exact year right now. The one that will be producing quite nicely this year, we hope, is the Evergreen Lake Terrace, right below Evergreen Lake. So that's a history of those.
So about how many years does it take for them to start producing the fruit?
5 years, 4 to 5 years, you get a small crop. And then by 6 and 7, you should get a decent crop. We have been harsh on our vineyard and not pushed them too fast. So we've been a little bit slower than probably a more efficient vineyard might be.
Does the maturity of the plant do anything for the flavor profile, or is it really just more of the amount of fruit produced?
Ben, do you want to comment?
Yeah, definitely. So as Mel was talking about the time frame it takes for a vine to produce fruit, that time frame also dictates the quality of the fruit, generally speaking. So if we were to take fruit from a vine that had 2 or 3 years of age and make wine from that wine would be probably a lot less complex and would have just single fruit flavors. The body of the wine would be lower, probably the alcohol content as well, versus a wine that starting to get into its stride, say year 5, year 7, up to say year 30, as those vines become more stable in their environment, they have a more established root system, they're able to deal with water stress, heat stress. Those wines start to, and we always talk about complexity being derived from deeper root systems being down into the rock systems and stuff like that. So all that can add to the complexity of and the quality of the wine, the resulting wine. Hopefully that answered your question. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. All right. Shall we move to the next wine?
Is everybody ready? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Who is that? That's Ashley.
So let me preface this a little bit by the vintage. This was almost as good as 2020. This was a very warm and dry year, 2016. In fact, it was so dry at times that we got worried. A couple of the vineyards, particularly the part of the Upper East Side, got a little bit of drought stress. And so what happens in drought stress, when it's lacking water, it closed up. The vines stopped maturing. But that was only temporary because we got very lucky. I don't know whether somebody went to their religious location and prayed for rain, but we got just the right amount of rain for helping the vine, for making the vine live and mature. What they say about good quality years is that the vines do they do benefit from some amount of stress, but not too much. So stress is helpful, but not too much stress, which is why some people object to having irrigation. We don't, by the way, have any irrigation. It's all rain-fed. It's all groundwater provided. But the season ended, as a matter of fact, you have your inserts. If you look, the 20 Rose vineyard was harvested on September 25th. There's only been 2 times since I've been here, and that's since 1997, when harvest has occurred before October. And that was 2012, when almost every vineyard was harvested before in late September, and then 2016, both of which were warm, very dry years. So shall we taste? Do you want to give an introduction, or Ben?
Yeah, I can talk about this wine. So I think one thing that you guys should check out is there's a distinct color difference in between the two. So the 16 has a richer golden color, and that's going to indicate it's a bit older. So as these wines start to age, they're going to take on a little bit more color. And it's dramatically more viscous in the glass. And that's due to that, the dry, mature fruit, really nice, high sugar, high Brix content, higher alcohol. And you can just tell the difference visually speaking when you compare these 2 vintages. And then aromatically, I feel like this is quintessential Riesling from Cuke Lake Vineyards. It's very expressive. It's starting to develop some secondary characteristics of like honey and ginger in the glass. And this is typical of Riesling when it has some time to age, which I think is what you can and should do with your Rieslings. They can lay down for a very long time, and they start to develop these beautiful secondary and tertiary aromas. But there's also a lot of freshness, more riper tropical fruit. You're going to have some mandarin, a little bit of peach, and then those really nice honeyed characteristics, which I think is completely different and from the 18, and is very much representative of the vintage and the weather that we experienced in 16.
How long? I would guess this could be laid down for 15 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a little bit more sugar on the palate. I think it's a bit sweeter. And And
Yeah,
again,
the RS, you're right, is in this case is 8 grams. And it's only barely seriously dry.
right on the cusp. Yeah.
Yeah, because the total, the acid is 8.7 grams. Yeah.
But I think what's interesting to note is just how different this Riesling is versus the 18, and in regards to the ripeness of the fruit and the overall structure and the length and the complexity of this wine. It's all very much influenced by our weather systems here, which makes it difficult to make great wines here. But I think we've achieved some success, Mel, or the previous winemakers have, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you that are familiar with Keuka Lake Vineyards, this wine was started by another Katie and finished by Stacy. And the 15, which we will taste, was made by Katie as well. And I don't, if those of you who have been around with us for a while probably know Stacy, as at least Stacy, and probably Katie as well.
The difference side by side, I don't know last time I did like two years and vintages side by side, but it's crazy. The like bright underripe green apple compared to this is like overripe stone fruit to me. It's really cool to taste these differences next to each other. It's so different.
It's a really stupid comment, but both of us, when we were smelling it, we were like, this smells like pine salt, like cleaning fluid, in the best way possible. Not in a bad way, but I was like, what is that note that I'm getting?
Especially it being so different from the first, you kind of expect it to be the same. So that kind of thing catches you off guard. It really
caught me off guard. And then I feel like the flavor of this in the mouth is so different than how it initially was in the nose. Like I do get that ginger and that stone fruit in the mouth, as opposed to this like bright, acidic, almost like piney lemon in the nose. So it's really interesting.
I think that's a very good comment. This is a time when the nose doesn't reveal what's in the glass. In my mind, very different.
I felt I had the initial flavor of pear, and that's what came to me at first. Now it's opened up a little bit more too.
Katie?
Yes. Excuse me?
Ev's got a question, Mel.
No, I was used to hear that if you wanted to have a great vintage, you have to have
because of the screen share modes, you can't.
no rain for the last 2 weeks in September or early October, and
You want to scroll through and see, but you can't get to the gallery, unfortunately. Yeah.
Good, okay.
No.
Thanks. Okay, thank you.
Oh, Mel, Ev had a question.
Oh, okay. Please.
just reminiscing. I used to hear that the last 2 weeks in September, first week of October, if you had any rain, you had a struggle. If you had sun, beautiful weather, you had a chance of having a great vintage. Is that still? Is that?
I mean, we'll be discussing the 15 in a minute. I don't think we can make a universal rule. I think that it's probably an indication that if we have a lot of rain, it's problematic. But I mean, generally we'll have some rain in the fall. I mean, and I think that's probably true in Bordeaux as well. Isn't that right, Ben? I mean, some rain isn't going to hurt, and they do have some rain in Bordeaux during fall.
Yeah, we definitely get rains in towards the end of September, early October. When I was working harvest in 2018, it was a very particular year. Unlike here in the Finger Lakes, there was definitely a hot spell and a drought towards the end of September and October. And I remember distinctly the technical director, Jean-René Matignon, he was talking to me and we were speaking about picking dates and when we were going to pick the fruit. And he was telling me he's never experienced a season like this since 1985 when he took over, where he didn't have to be forced to pick due to the oncoming rains. There was absolutely zero rot in the vineyards, and we didn't have any issues that were forcing us to pick our fruit. So I'm saying that because if you do get some rain in the mid-September or late September, you can definitely have some surfacing of some fungal pressures that can lead to a poor vintage and can force you to harvest your fruit a bit earlier than possibly wanted. Yeah. Good question. All right. So does anyone else have any other questions or comments? Should we move to the final wine, last and not least?
Oh, I'm still relishing this. It's so delicious. I don't want to leave it, but I guess you just have to at times, right?
Good news is when you have a full-size bottle, you can enjoy as much of it as you want post-tasting.
Absolutely. All right. So Mel, would you like to tell us about the 2015 vintage?
Okay. Oh, okay. 15 was, it was such an interesting year. I don't know how many of you recall the winter of 15, which is, December 14, January, February, March 15. It was perhaps the coldest winter in many, many, many years. We had temperatures down to -13. The snow fell, I think, in late November, early December, and it just stayed here. It was a real awful winter. Bud break was somewhat late, and then it was a decent summer. It wasn't too rainy, it wasn't too hot, but it was nice. But once again, when we came to harvest, I'll never forget. And once again, that season, if any of you were here doing the annual harvest with us, it was done on October 3rd because we did the evergreen lick. And on October 3rd, there were snow flurries. So, it was a strange harvest. And you'll see that the harvest was spread out because the Upper East Side was then harvested on October 11th. People ask the question, and isn't the afternoon sun hotter than the morning sun? Yes, it is. Shouldn't that mean that the East Side vineyards ripen earlier than the West Side? Well, we would all think that, but somehow, take a look at that. Evergreen Lek harvested on October 3rd, and Upper East Side was harvested on October 11th. How was that possible? It's very strange. But it ended up being a spectacular year. In fact, that was a year where 2015, where we made single vineyards from the Goldman Vineyard, the Evergreen Lake Vineyard, and the Falling Man Vineyard. And the Falling Man Vineyard Riesling was judged by the Wine Spectator as their favorite 2015 wine from the Finger Lakes. Okay, and I would also, and this 2015 was also a wonderful wine as well. Yeah.
Let me see. I'll put it up.
Yeah, shall we taste it, Mel?
You see it?
No, you can't see it. The lights on. No, you can't see
Yeah, I
it.
can't.
I think it would be fun if we kind of all did this one together. So as a group, if you guys could kind of just describe to me some of the aromatic characteristics of this wine that stand out to you, that kind of make this wine unique in comparison maybe to the other ones.
Feel free to holler out whatever you're tasting and smelling.
Melon.
Okay, great.
Like
Smell melon. Taste melon.
Yeah, we get honeydew for sure.
Yeah, I have that written down. Yeah, honeydew melon. Yeah.
Right.
Honey.
Some honey. Yeah, that's going to be probably due to the little bit of the age on this wine. You're going to get some honey characteristics coming through.
Maybe some like white flour too.
It's drier.
I'm getting a little floral too, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit of like honeysuckle.
Oh yeah, maybe that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like a little like whetstone too. Mel, am I mistaken? Did you say that the Evergreen Lake was the one with slate?
Yes.
So is that what I'm getting in here?
They all have some slate, but it has lots of it.
Yeah, this is like wet slate, whetstone. I'm getting one of those, which is cool.
Yeah. So, and that's one thing I wanted to. I'm happy you. Is that Taylor that said that?
Ashley.
Ashley. Okay, sorry. I'm like flipping through the little videos. So, and like to me, the higher percentage of Evergreen Lek really kind of defines this wine. So you get that minerality that shows through, and really kind of is the identity. To me, it almost reminds me a bit like Chablis. There's like a chalkiness on the palate, like it's almost like a tactile minerality that you can almost kind of feel on your tongue, and that's definitely indicative of what you get from Evergreen Lek. Yeah, so that's great you picked up on that. Yeah.
This was a wine that I would just add a comment that really benefited. We opened a bottle for the three of us to share about 3 hours ago, two and a half hours, 3 hours ago. And it's really benefited from hearing. I'd strongly recommend when you drink your bottle, this one in particular, you open it well in advance of when you're going to actually serve it or drink it.
I've noticed that for the last two, at least, that we've tasted, that even when I've poured it out of these little guys, when I first pour it, the smell and the taste is different, even from like 3 or 4 minutes later when I taste it and smell it again. Like this one we just tried, when we first poured this, a little guy here, my first thought was a stupid one again. And I was like, oh, it smells like a green apple Jolly Rancher. And now it like has this lovely honeysuckle and honeydew melon and like more like sophisticated flavor, but it definitely comes out like punchier and more acidic and then sort of blooms and opens up the longer it's in the glass.
Yeah, it's very nice how the wines will evolve just over the period that you drink them. Yeah, from start to finish. Yeah, it's always great.
And it's good that you did that. It's so much fun to do that, to pour some, smell it, taste it, leave it for a few minutes, do it again. It's just, it's enriching.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some wines that they recommend that you should leave for 24 hours or even 48 hours. I've met some winemakers in the Loire Valley in France and made some visits with them, and they opened up a really old bottle of wine for me, and I told them that I was going to come back the next day to buy a bunch of wine, and she was like, when you taste this wine tomorrow, it's going to taste the way it's supposed to taste, because it needs like 24 hours to breathe, to really come out into its own.
You open it.
So,
okay.
Always judge a wine by the first sip, by the first 5 minutes. Sometimes they need to be, it's totally cool to decant a white wine.
He doesn't have a plus sign next to his face, Harry?
He does.
Oh, then you're.
So I bring them all up, see.
I think we have a question.
Mel, can you hear me? Or I was wondering how long you can keep this wine, the 15.
Oh.
Set up to 15 years.
What would you guess? What would you guess?
I think this wine can age another 10 years. I think this wine can age another 10 years.
We're getting some feedback now, aren't we?
I'm getting.
Another try.
There we go.
Now, Ben, what were you saying?
So I was saying the 15 I think could definitely age minimum 10 years, if not more. 15. You can definitely lay down for quite a long time.
Do you mean 10 years from now, or do you mean 10 years from?
10 years from now. Yeah, I would say 10 years from now. Yeah. And I think that would be conservative.
Mm-hmm. And would you aerate these?
I think you can. Like with a decanter. Yeah, I think you totally could decant these white wines. Yeah. Particularly when if they're very old, I would not decant them. You can test that and see based on the aromatics and the fruit quality. But I think when a wine is young or is in starting its aging process, they definitely benefit from a little bit of aeration. That's for sure. Yeah, and you're gonna see some evolution, just like the woman that had the Jolly Rancher green apple in her glass, how that evolved to some beautiful, classy honeysuckle peaches wine. They're always going to benefit from a little bit of aeration. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that particularly this one, the 15, I think that this would definitely benefit from a lot of aeration.
Even just when we opened it up an hour and a half, 2 hours ago, it was very closed aromatically. So if a wine is, you're not getting a lot of character from the wine from the glass, just give it some time, or maybe even toss it in a decanter. You could even double decant back into the bottle if you like, and give it a little more time, and it should open up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I almost wish we had a fourth one to compare to.
I wish we did too.
Me too. Note for next time.
Well, actually, one of the things that I think would illustrate is that we might, when we do this again, we've been debating back, and and I know that Katie's going to solicit all of your advice. But one of the things that we won't do right away, but I think maybe next year that would be nice, would be to do the 12, 13, and 14. Take a couple of older vintages, because we do actually have good quantities of the 2012, 2000. We have more 2012, 13, and 14 than we have of the 15 and 16 and 18.
But how much do you have of the 15? Because I'm going to need more of this one specifically.
I don't know. It depends how much you bid. No, I'm just joking. You'll have to talk to your friend.
Okay.
Deliver it for you. Don't worry.
Thank you. For your second vaccine shot, I'll take a couple of bottles. Thank you.
We're about to request the same thing. We'll be in touch.
Yes.
Yeah, when we did this blind, when we had a couple of meetings, Ben, Katie, and I, and we were debating back and forth, what should we do? And so we finally chose this for various reasons. And for so many reasons, this was just a lucky, ideal choice. And I think the 15 and the 16 tasting much richer than I had remembered them when we drank them 2 or 3 years ago. Does anybody have a favorite?
The 15, I'm on my own tonight, so I just put the rest of the 15 into my glass. That's what I'll be finishing off.
I would say 15 is my favorite.
I like the 16.
You like
I like
16?
the 16 too.
Yeah, I like the 16. How about you?
I'm a 15.
Oh, you're a 15.
I
like the
vote for
16.
16.
I think the 16 was lighter than the 15.
I gotta give the 18 a little bit more love though. No one is. The green apple is just lovely.
Now we want to open the bottles.
I know.
I know we're about to open our 18 and have it with some Thai food we just got delivered. We're very excited.
Oh, wow, perfect.
It would go good.
A really good choice. I'm very envious.
Dave, that was all on your advice.
Well, one of the beauties of Riesling,
When there's a pond.
and what I personally believe in, is when you really do like a wine, it's worthwhile getting 2 or 3 bottles, because especially if that wine ages well, because then you can have one. I mean, each of these wines is tasting quite good right now, but then particularly the 15 and the 16 are going to taste very good 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and 10 years from now. So it's one that and it's nice to lay down in a safe spot where you don't have to worry about somebody sniffing it.
I'm gonna take an inventory real quick.
And
envelopes and
and then you have anyway. I won't.
I think it's the reds that we.
Oh, I'd be looking forward to the 20.
Yes. When will that be available? Oh,
Well, we're just about ready. The 18, by the way, we're just about done with it. So if anybody really likes the 18, it's not. Now's the time to get it, because we are going to be moving to the 2019 Dry Riesling. I would guess in about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that, or maybe even slightly less. But I guess 6 to 8 weeks. And then in 2020, we'll likely to bottle in the summer. And then what we tend to do is we give priority to our wine club members before we release it.
I just do white, or is it white and red?
Who I couldn't hear. What?
It's white and red. I was white and red. Are we on?
Are you going to have some more wine tasting, virtual wine tasting?
We really hope so. And we kind of hope to do more of these either verticals or looking at, in particular, like vignole and the different ways that can be expressed. We have, our orange vignole, our amber vignoles. We have the dry vignoles, the single vineyard. So we're definitely going to be doing more of these events.
And a carbonated, and soon a pet nat. Are you familiar with what a pet nat is? Ben, you want to explain?
Yeah, so pet nat is short for pétillant naturel, which means naturally sparkling. So it's an ancient method. It's one of the first methods of producing sparkling wine. And what happens is you arrest the fermentation at a certain point while there's still some sugar and while there's still active yeast in your tank. And you quickly bottle that before the yeast wake up. And then we put the bottled wine into a hot room, and then the yeast will wake back up and they finish the fermentation in the bottle, thus trapping the CO2 under the crown cap. So it's a really old school way of making sparkling wine, and it's starting to see a resurgence, I think, in the last 15 years. And yeah, it's really, really good. We're pretty excited to share this wine with you guys.
You have
Yeah, this is
now.
Sorry?
You have a rosé.
Do we do a rosé? Was that the question?
Yeah, I think I saw you on your website. You have a rosé.
We have made a rosé. The last vintage was 2018 now.
Yeah.
We do currently have a rosé. Yeah. I don't know if we're going to make one in 2021, but there might be a good chance that we will.
When do you expect the sparkling wine to come out?
Probably about in the summer. I just want to say that I was stunned. This was totally Ben's innovation and idea, and it is glorious. I mean,
It's exciting, very exciting.
I was blown over by it, and it was delicious. And it's ready, but we need to get a label approved and make a label and release it. And we're planning on releasing it.
Someone was asking about a sparkling rosé.
Oh, is that it?
Will you do that special procedure for a sparkling rosé? I would like that too.
Ben?
In the works, Harold. It could be in the works. Yeah. It almost happened this year. It didn't, but
that's right.
Season this year, it might be something that's going to come to fruition. Yeah.
Other than the historical uniqueness of that Patton method that you've talked about, what makes it so different? You said that Mel was talking about how great it tasted and all.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of died away if I'm listening to what you said, and then it's making a resurgence, and you brought it back. What's different than just the usual way that people make sparkling?
Yeah, good question. Well, it's easier, number one. From a winemaking perspective, it's easier because we bottle and we allow the yeast to do their thing in the bottle. And it's a little more rustic. Sometimes you have some sedimentation from the totalized yeast, so the yeast that are present in the liquid, when they die, they fall out into solution. But that's one thing that makes Patton's great and different from some other wines that are sparkling. You do get a lot of particular proteins that contribute to flavor and contribute to like a textural mouthfeel in the wine. So that adds a really nice element to it. There are some wines that are made sparkling that have been force carbonated in a tank, and they've been injected artificially with carbon dioxide. And those wines don't benefit from any of the yeast aging. So there aren't any of those textural flavor components that you get from the yeast in the wine. And then lastly, the champagne method is quite a complicated process, and it takes a long time to do. And you're making a lot of different wines and you're blending them together, and you're adding sugar and yeast to start a secondary fermentation. And then you're allowing that to age for a number of years. And then you actually, you do what's called a disgorgement. You disgorge the yeast. So you collect the yeast by doing a process called riddling, which can be automatic, which most of it's done now automation. But back in the day, the French would have the bottles of wine on a rack, and they would turn the bottles by hand and slowly collect the autolyzed yeast cells in the neck of the bottle. And they would disgorge, and they would put the cork in, and that would be the final process of that. So I think there's a lot of different things that influence the flavor, but the Patton definitely benefits from having the yeast within the wine. Yeah.
So kind of like you know the proverbial box of chocolates. You're not quite sure what you're going to get, kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. Control. So there'll be some variation, and you're letting nature take its course. And one of the things that I personally was having a little bit of stress about was we filtered the wine prior to bottling it, and we did that because you can have wines that will gush, and that happens when you have too many like nucleation sites for the carbon dioxide to come out of. So the wines will just explode everywhere, and we wanted to have as clear a product as possible. So we filtered up to a certain point, kind of right up to where the size of the yeast could pass through. So we were concerned that maybe we were going to filter out the yeast and not have the fermentation continue in the bottle. So it was kind of a roll of the dice in that aspect. And so we weren't sure whether or not there would be a homogeneous spread of yeast amongst every bottle, or there would be, you know, a difference in concentrations in each bottle. But I think as we've tasted quite a number of these pet nats, they all seem to be consistent and homogeneous. So we took a roll of the dice, but I think we got some great consistencies. Yeah.
I am not a good nor an objective observer or objective taster of pet nat. I don't know it that well. I feel a lot more confident about Riesling, but frankly, this pet nat is the best. I've tasted maybe a dozen, and this is my favorite of the ones I've tasted so far. It is quite bright and lovely, and yet has a bit of that yeasty flavor. So it doesn't have frequently what you get in pet nat, because it's so rustic, is you can get a kind of bitterness to it, but it doesn't have that bitterness. At least that's my judgment.
I agree. And this pet nat is going to have, I think Mel mentioned briefly, a new label. So we just started the process of working with an artist based out of Vermont, and he's going to be doing some label design work for us. So you're going to see a couple of new labels potentially on the orange wine and the pet nat come early summer, late spring. Yeah, when we bottle these guys. So
And what's the name of the artist? What's his name again?
His name is Tim Patton.
Tim Patton.
Yeah, he's a cartoonist, artist based out of Vermont. Yeah.
We're excited to taste the orange wine.
Yeah. It's great.
I'm very excited. It's great.
You just, the orange wine is great, and I don't know anybody else that's done Vignoles as an orange wine, but it's got a big following in New York City. But I am even more excited by, that's where you're from? Okay, you're not from New York City, you're from Brooklyn, right?
Correct.
Oh, all right.
Katie's Brooklyn crew showing up here.
Like, give me the pet nats and the orange wine.
Yeah.
How could you tell? How could you tell? That's so weird.
Yeah.
Both my parents are from Brooklyn. Okay. But the orange wine that Ben made in 2020 is absolutely, and he was just doing it blind in a sense. He'd never done it before, so it was quite creative. And I'm not a great fan of orange wine, but this orange wine is truly extraordinary. Does everybody know what an orange wine is? Okay. Who wants to explain?
I want to hear you explain it, Mel. It's just me.
An orange wine is, we name it dry amber Vignoles. But what an orange wine is it's making white wine the same way you'd make red wine. Does everybody, to simplify, red wines, what you do is you take the grapes and you leave them with the skins. You leave the skins on, and you either pump down or punch down the grapes, and it's the skins that largely give the color to the wine. White wine on and then once it's fermented, the sugars are transformed to alcohol, then you press out the juice, and then you get your wine, and you age your wine. Usually for red wine, you age it in barrels. In the case of white wine, the way you make it is you bring in the grapes and you immediately press the wine. So you press the grapes and you remove the skin. The skin becomes what we call pumice. We throw it back on the vineyard. It becomes nitrogen, useful in the vineyard. So you press it, you take, and then you ferment the juice without the skins. And so it's white. That's why it's white. You get no color. But if you want to make orange wine, you make the white wine as if you're making red wine. So you ferment, in other words, you get the alcohol out when the skins are with the juice. So the skins give it a kind of color. The skins and oxygen give some color to the juice, and the color turns amber orange, and that's why it's called orange wine. And it's a very different flavor because you get a lot of the skins tend to have tannins and other more astringent flavors that come out. And so some people, particularly in Brooklyn, they just love it.
On a menu too, you might see it listed as skin fermented or skin contact wine rather than orange wine. It's all kind of the same category.
I was going to ask, would you call that skin contact, or what's the difference there? Or is there no difference in just whatever?
Some people will use skin contact to describe a wine that hasn't extracted enough of the tannins and phenols to give you that orange color, but it still has the characteristics that you're looking for. Kind of more of that structure, more of the tannin.
Cool.
The question from Scott Lindner is, how does that differ from making a rosé?
Ben, you want to address that?
I can take that. Yeah. Good question. So when you're making a rosé, you can, and I think what we've done here in the past is the red grapes, they go directly into the press. So they're treated almost like white grapes, and the amount of extraction that you get only occurs during the pressing process of the fruit. So as the fruit is being macerated and pressed by the bladder or the vertical press, you're going to get some releasing of the phenolics and the anthocyanins that give the wine the color. And you try to do that as fast as you can to achieve a certain level of color that you want. Particularly in Provence, you see that really light, beautiful pink color. And those wines are pressed cold and fast. And because heat is definitely a determinant factor on color extraction. So those wines, they get pressed off, the juice gets pressed off, and it's fermented in generally stainless steel to maintain a nice, clean fruit characteristic. And they're almost treated like white wines from there. So an orange wine is a wine that's made from white grapes made in a red wine fashion. And a rosé is red grapes that have been made in a white wine making fashion. So there you go. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Keep the questions coming. This is great. This is wonderful.
That's like the best way I've heard that explained recently, by the way. Now I know. This is good to know.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, there's so many different things you can do. A lot of experimentation. And that's what's nice about being in the United States. We're not kind of tied to an AOC or a DOC or a DOCG that regulates winemaking tradition and winemaking styles, where your wines, if you want to make a Barolo, it has to be made from 100% Nebbiolo, and it has to be aged for a period of 3 years. And it has to have a particular style to it, and it goes in front of the tasting panel to be sure that it is what you say that it is.
Right.
In the United States, it's kind of like a wild, wild west. There aren't any like winemaking traditions or legislation that has any impact on style, which is great. It's more just regional designation.
I think that's also what Katie was getting at earlier about the richness of Vignoles, but it's also true of Riesling, which is that if you think of Riesling, you can make Riesling very dry, somewhat dry, and very sweet, and dessert wine. We've made one fabulous, which is called Plaquenber and Auslese, which is TBA. It's the richest, sweetest dessert wine And I mean, it's a glorious, it's where your grapes are kind of, you leave them in the vineyard until November, and they shrivel up and they're purple. They get this noble rot, and you gather them and you press them, and you get this glorious flavors. And then when you ferment it, you only get 7 or 8% alcohol, but you get lots of sugar remaining, so it's very sweet, desserty. At the same time, you can make sparkling from Riesling. But in the case of Vignol, you can also, by the way, make orange wine. But in the case of Vignol here, we've made orange wine, we've made single vineyard Vignol, we've made carbonated, now we've made kind of champagne or Patton, and we make a regular Vignol that's delicious, it's a perfect wine with fish. I mean, and lots of other things. We haven't discussed, by the way, Katie, what you had insisted that we should. We ought to talk about what foods that we recommend with the wines that we've tasted.
Yes.
Yeah, I think one thing that we can talk about a little bit is how these wines would lend themselves not just to specific flavors, but specific types of cuisine, and what about those wines would work well with those foods, that we're not necessarily giving you a pairing, but we're giving you kind of a suggested how to think about what wines go with the food you want to eat, or vice versa. Like if you're going to open up one of these bottles, what kind of dinner are you going to make, or what takeout are you going to order, and what would we all suggest?
I'll just start the ball rolling. The first thing I hope, if for those of you who are not vegetarians, I would start these Rieslings would all go with the chicken dishes, particularly coq au vin or chicken in general. But then I just tasted the 16, and what it made me think of, that would go beautifully with a curry. It doesn't have to be chicken. It could go with all kinds of curry. It could be a Thai curry or an Indian curry or a Nepali curry.
Ooh.
And or other spicy food like that. What do you think, Sue? Do you think it would, or Carol? You think that would go with a Nepal, with a dal bhat?
I love a Riesling with curry. Dal bhat, tarikari.
Yeah.
That's what I go for.
Yeah. Be perfect with it.
We already opened our Thai food. We're eating it slightly off camera, and it's really good with the Riesling.
Bon appetit.
Yeah, bon appetit. Yeah. We're all jealous sitting here.
Yeah. I came on the beginning of Zoom with a little bit of make fun, but I wanted to pair it, but I ate it all. Whoops.
We timed this really strategically.
Well done. Well done.
What else would you pair it with? Anybody else have thoughts?
With the salad.
One
We,
thing. Go ahead, please.
A fruity Riesling goes great with smoked pork chops. Just that you need something assertive for something that strong of a flavor.
I like that. Good.
Yeah, absolutely. In that realm, anything kind of smoked. I was even considering, it would go great with American barbecue. It would go great with some kind of like burnt. What am I thinking of? Like burnt tips, like brisket tips. It would go great with, things that have a lot of fat to them, because you have the acid from the Riesling can really stand up against very oily food, fatty food, things that have a lot of fat to them.
I think that brisket idea is a really good one. Yeah. That's my next.
Brisket.
Yeah.
Do it for Passover.
Riesling with Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Thanksgiving would be great. I just came back from New Orleans, and it was the tour de force of Cajun food. And, we were like grabbing 5-pound bags of crawdads and going to the bayou and eating crawfish and gumbo and like Gas station fried chicken is a very famous thing in New Orleans, and high level culinary food there. And I was thinking the whole time dry Riesling would go fantastic with all of this food.
Yeah, that's kind of like our wine of choice for summer barbecues when you're not quite sure what everyone's bringing.
Yeah.
We grab a couple of Rieslings. Kind of goes with a lot of different things.
I agree.
Like that way of thinking where you're not really sure what the potluck is going to have, but you know it's all in this one family, and get you a wine that can do it all.
This tastes really good with
Ooh, Katie.
Okay.
the wine.
Get you a wine that can do it all.
Kind of.
Any other thoughts?
Are you doing any reds?
I'm going to send out an email afterwards, and I'd love to get your feedback on what we'd like to see in future virtual tasting events, or even, on-site tasting events when it's safe to do so. And I think reds would be great. We have a lot of Cabernet Franc, and we have Arlian Merlot. We're open to any and all suggestions that you guys who've sat through and enjoyed our first virtual tasting might have to share.
Yeah, what do you expect if you're going to do the 2012? You said 2012, 14. I forget what the other one was.
13. Yeah.
Duh. Would you, given those are older, I don't know what the weather was like or anything else like that. Can you give us like the preview? This is we're watching the movie short before the other movie comes on. What would you expect if you do that? I'm assuming you will, but I'm hoping you will.
I'm not sure I follow your question exactly.
Well, you've tasted those, you've tasted these. There's a big difference between these. You've got one that's 2018 was a challenge. It's a very nice wine. 16, you open it up and your head just snaps back. 15, as you wait, the longer and longer you wait, the more different it gets. Would you expect that kind of spread of range of different experiences if you did those 2012, 13, and 14?
Yes. You wouldn't have, I remember the years very distinctly. The 14 will be, I also remember that we were always experimenting in the style of making the wine. So the 14 is slightly sweeter. But the 12, which has evolved into a fantastic wine. I remember that I was really worried about it. And all of a sudden, 2 or 3 years later, the Wall Street Journal reviewer tasted our wine in a restaurant in New York City and wrote glowingly about it. She wrote glowingly about this wine. And then we've tasted it since, and it's evolving. It was another dry early year. 13 is going to be the not perfect year, but it's going to be interesting. And it will be the same thing. You will have to open them up in advance, and they're all tasting decently, if not outstanding.
Well, decent to outstanding is a foregone conclusion. It's that range of different experiences that it sounds like it's going to be different, but it's just going to be as wide. So looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, but I think as implied in what we've all been saying, probably we're going to try. There's been a suggestion from, was it Anne that you asked about the red? Yeah, I think it was Anne. There are people that are pushing for a red, and there are people pushing for, what about a Vignole? And the Vignole could be so interesting because it could be, the various states. It could be, you could have a very creative Vignole tasting. So we'll only get back to Riesling. And then, of course, there are single vineyards. The only problem that we face with single vineyards is it's very expensive. And do people, if we send out single vineyards, and it will, the cost of the tasting will be perhaps prohibitive, so people might not want to do it. We'll have to see. We'll have to try different experiments and see. Would you do a vertical of Evergreen Lick or Falling Man?
Those are all questions we can ask in the follow-up
Sure.
to get kind of a more detailed individual.
Sorry, Katie. You're
It's
right.
all good. It's all good. I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to join us tonight. This was a really great experience for us, and I hope it was a great experience for you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much, friends and family who joined us from all over the place. It's a pretty big group. We've got folks from the Finger Lakes here. We've got folks in New York City, folks in, Massachusetts, and where else is everyone from? California. We've got folks in
DC.
That's why you have
That's why it's such a light there.
Hi, Barb.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, yeah.
Is that Dave?
Virginia.
Is that Dave? Hi, Dave. Hi, Barb.
Dave's in the office, but he was here. He was looking at a little while ago.
Oh, okay. Where's hi, Edie and Mort. Hi,
Mel.
Carol and Sue and wow, and Jim Moon. Where's Jim Moon?
Wow.
Hi, Jim.
Uncle Scott and Aunt Carol.
Yeah, hi. This was great. Thank you.
Yeah, tell Eric hello.
Yeah, we will.
Great. Well, thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Loved it.
Bye-bye.
Birthday.